take a page of sketch, of charcoal and paper, ink of pen, as William Faulkner would do on a New Orleans sunny afternoon. Mirrors of Chartres Street. Join me for a death in the afternoon, or the absinthe ritual, for the piano of ragtime you'll find soon. They're building my coffin today. No more to save with an etouffee, beginning with a dream. In New Orleans I'll always stay. For it is what in history, Mr. Faulkner, we find in books in these hallowed halls. The Mahogany Jazz tells the story of the spirits and all.
Within the heart, soul, and blood oath to New Orleans experiences, one famous jazz hall stands apart, and yet oddly not reported on as much as its peers. The Mahogany Jazz Hall, premier jazz club, that is presently one of the most renowned old venues in the French Quarter, to hear the best traditional jazz in town. The ambience has a pre-Prohibition feel to it, a step back into a bygone area. Co-owner Kate Fulton arrived right after Katrina from the Czech Republic to work which would have become her family at a local renowned jazz hall. She came to know all the traditional jazz performers in town, developed a true passion for jazz, and even married a premier trumpeter, Mike Fulton. Kate and her friend, Jun Yoshizaki, another jazz aficionado from Japan, often spent together reflecting on life during the pandemic. They both enjoyed drinking mezcal and frequently drank a unique lavender cocktail they concocted using mezcal, lemon, maraschino liqueur, and creme de violet. This led to daydreams about their future, and ultimately the decision to open their jazz club, serving pre-Prohibition style cocktails and a dozen varieties of absinthe, beer, and wine. Try the cocktail that Kate and Jun adored these afternoons, appropriately named Proprietress. Maybe death in the afternoon will suit you, with the absinthe and bubbles, or perhaps bee's knees, made with gin, lemon, and honey. Between the 1860s and 1920, when Prohibition on alcohol went into effect, American bartending came into its own. There existed a whole set of drinks and an entire style of bartending before Prohibition that fell into obscurity for decades. In the 13-year Prohibition, all the great bartenders moved to Europe or went underground to work for a speakeasy. The real golden age for cocktails sat between 1860 and the start of Prohibition. Kate and Jun founded an older bar to fully remodel, making a place where their family and staff of musicians would be able to be happy and play and work. The setting is intimate and great for acoustics, top-of-the-line musicians to play. Fridays and Saturdays are added to light, tasteful burlesque to accompany the traditional jazz. Tonight on the Wicked Webs We Weave podcast, we go into the haunted history of 125 Chartres Street in New Orleans, Louisiana, French Quarter. I'm Ryan McKern. Thank you again for joining me, mon ami. Warm yourself by the proverbial fire, and welcome to the Wicked Webs We Weave podcast. Enter the Mahogany Jazz Hall. After spending an hour with one of the owners of Mahogany Jazz Hall, Thais, it became apparent to us that not only was the Mahogany Jazz Hall a legitimately haunted location, but the historical events which happened here bordered on the unbelievable, making it a perfect stopping place for the pub crawls. Many of the staff who work here have had run-ins with the ghosts that haunt the building, mysterious hands touching them, Phantom whispers into their ears when nobody is around. And most interesting of all, the shadows of people walking through the club when no one is in. These ghostly apparitional sights have all been reported by the staff. The question remains, who could possibly be haunting the Mahogany Jazz Hall? The owners are allowing us a chance to spend time there, doing our own paranormal investigation, hopefully spending the night at Mahogany Jazz Hall with our ghost hunting equipment in hand will help us find out who is haunting here. The history that is the haunted location of the Mahogany Jazz Hall, it may not be too hard to narrow down exactly who is haunting within these walls. The Mahogany Jazz Hall's past, according to Thais, gave a little insight on the hall's history, but it was after doing some of our own research that we uncovered the few tragic stories that may explain the unrest going on inside the Mahogany Jazz Bar. It starts back in 1888, when the hall was a lodging house owned by Fred Folks. Charles Murphy, a 26-year-old shoemaker from England, came to stay at his folks' lodging house when he had been in New Orleans for about 2 years and had been employed by Anderson's shoe factory on North Peters Street. When he was struck with a fever that he just couldn't seem to shake, his illness was making it difficult for him to work long hours that he had been accustomed to, and was sending him to what said a depressed state. On the morning of March 31st, Mr. Folks did his regular 6 a.m. wake-up call on Murphy. They chatted briefly, and Folks went back downstairs. Once alone, Murphy secured a piece of clothing line about 2.5 feet long, made a loop knot on one end, placed it around his neck, and fastened the other to an iron hook in the wall. 3 hours later, Mr. Folk found him. He had strangled himself to death. Murphy wasn't the only one that found himself in a desperate state of mind at the Folks' lodging house. Just 2 years later, George Crace, a 30-year-old German immigrant, was stranded in New Orleans when he found Folks' lodging house. He arrived in the city a few weeks earlier and had apparently spent all of the money he had arrived with in the Crescent City. He was penniless and homeless, but Folk gave him a room and helped him find some work. Mr. Folk had a friend who lived in the country. He decided to reach out to this man and to inquire about giving Crace a job. The gentleman and he would hire Crace, but Crace had to know how to bake. Crace had the fake-it-till-you-make-it attitude, and even though he didn't have a clue about baking, he said he would take the job. He thanked Mr. Folk and went about his day as usual, in his good-natured, humorous self. On Valentine's Day in 1890, George Crace took the last bits of his money and purchased a Defender .32 caliber revolver. At 10 p.m. in good spirits, Crace retired to his room. As usual, once behind closed doors of his private quarters, Crace put the muzzle of the revolver into his mouth and pulled the trigger. And poor Mr. Folk was left to discover yet another suicide victim in his lodging house. At the Mahogany Jazz Hall, the drink of choice is absinthe, otherwise known as the Green Fairy. However, it has been found to be no more harmful than any other alcohol. It's best served cold, or at the ritual with the sugar cube and fire. But it isn't the only spirit at the Mahogany Jazz Hall. The general manager, Connie Fry, told us of the spirits. I've had staff members previously that have mentioned actually seeing a figure in the back room. I've had several customers who have mentioned having feelings of things brushing across their shoulder, fingers running through their hair, and seen the shadows out of the corners of their eyes. In the 1800s, the bar was part of the quarterhouse, and one day a man decided to deal with life's difficulties in a surprising way. Unfortunately, there were more mysterious cases of suicides, despite the bar's sinister past. The spirits here are benevolent, according to some. Others that are peaceful, and they are just coming to enjoy the show. Some say that one of the ghostly spirits is a bit of a jokester. To quote, "We have one who is jokingly called Rebecca, because we don't know her name. But you'll see a glass move a little bit on the bar. Or if you're getting ice out of the ice machine, the lid will drop on your head. She just wants to let you know that somebody's here." Thank you to WGNO.com. The tragedies at 125 Charters don't stop there. The headline on November 22nd, 1892 read, "Shot in the Dark. Mysterious killing on 125 Charter Street." Scotty Boyle, a well-known character and vagrant on the streets of the quarter, was standing right where the door of the Mahogany Jazz Hall is now. He was probably loitering, but reports say he was minding his business, and a tall man in brown dark suit approached him and instigated a confrontation. Tempers began to flare and voices were raised. A bystander heard the man in the brown suit say, "I'll shoot you for fun." The next thing they heard was a gunshot. Scotty Boyle had been shot in the face, with a bullet exiting through his left temple. The man in the brown suit fled the scene. He ran down Charters and Toulouse, and then headed towards the river. As Scotty's body fell into the gutter in front of 125 Charters, he was alive for a short while, unable to speak, but had died by the time the ambulance reached him. A man was arrested for armed robbery of the sheriff's office weeks later and held as a suspect in the murder of Scotty Boyle. But proven innocent in both cases, Scotty's killer was never found. Visiting the Mahogany Jazz Club, we're guessing it's the spirits of these poor men and souls that still inhabit the Mahogany Jazz Hall to this day. As time has gone on, we have only received more information from Thais regarding more hauntings, more strange or murders or suicides that took place in this former boarding house. Are all these instances merely coincidental? Drop by for a drink and a show at the Mahogany Jazz Club at 125 Charter Street. Tell Ryan McKern sent you. Please check the description of this video, as I will link all my resources in finding and research for this episode, including GhostCityTours.com, WWL.com, MJHNOLA.com. And thank you again for joining me in another French Quarter edition of the Wicked Webs We Weave podcast. Drop a comment below and let me know what you'd like to hear me cover next in a future episode. And as always, please check out our full catalog on Spotify. Once again, I'm your host, Ryan McKern. Let us get one more cocktail and toast to the ones we've lost, for the ghosts that roam the halls and the streets of the entire French Quarter. And until that trumpet plays again, au revoir.